The lights of New York City sparkled against the winter sky, illuminating the grand ballroom of the downtown skyscraper where the city's elite gathered for the annual charity gala. Aaliyah Brooks moved gracefully among the crowd, balancing trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Her black dress was simple yet elegant, blending into the background, but her presence radiated quiet confidence. She had always worked tirelessly, unnoticed by the powerful, yet tonight something in the air felt different. Richard Hale, a billionaire with a reputation as cold and calculating as his fortune, surveyed the room with a sense of entitlement. His tailored suit fit perfectly, but his arrogance was palpable. As he caught sight of Aaliyah moving gracefully through the crowd, a cruel smirk crossed his face. He approached her, the click of his polished shoes echoing in the high-ceilinged hall. "Step closer," he commanded, his tone sharp and dismissive. "Kneel." Aaliyah froze for a split second. Every eye turned toward them. Guests whispered nervously, unsure whether to intervene, and a heavy silence fell over the room. Her pulse raced, but she straightened her back, her voice steady. "I'm not kneeling," she said. The room held its breath. Hale's face darkened, his anger simmering. The billion-dollar gala, filled with the city's most influential people, had suddenly turned into a stage for a confrontation that no one would forget. Cameras flashed instinctively, and social media feeds began buzzing even before anyone had posted a word. "Do you know what she just did?" A deep voice rang out across the room. General Marcus Reed, a retired U.S. Army hero with decades of service and medals for valor, stepped forward. His presence demanded attention. Guests instinctively made way, all eyes shifting from Hale to Marcus and then to Aaliyah. "She is not just a waitress," Marcus said, his voice calm but authoritative. "She is a hero." The room erupted in whispers. Marcus recounted Aaliyah's past bravery. 2 years earlier, she had rescued 3 children from a burning car, unafraid of the flames or the collapsing metal, while bystanders froze in shock. That act had gone largely unnoticed, but tonight it became the lens through which everyone saw her courage. Hale's smirk faltered. The cameras, now capturing his reaction, showed the world a man who was suddenly exposed. Socialites, who had earlier feared his temper, now looked on with awe as Aaliyah's quiet dignity stood in stark contrast to his arrogance. Aaliyah understood the gravity of the moment. This was more than a confrontation, it was a lesson in courage, integrity, and moral authority. Each step, each decision mattered. Her refusal to kneel became a silent declaration: dignity could not be bought or coerced, and true power lay in standing firm. By the end of the evening, news outlets would feature her as the silent hero of New York, while social media exploded with hashtags celebrating her courage, hashtag respect for Aaliyah, hashtag dignity over wealth, hashtag gala hero. The city was buzzing, not about wealth or fashion, but about the bravery of a single woman who refused to submit to cruelty. Aaliyah returned to her modest apartment in Queens that night, exhausted but proud. She didn't seek fame, but she now realized that courage often had a ripple effect far beyond its immediate context. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The following week, New York City was still buzzing with whispers of the gala. Social media hadn't forgotten Aaliyah Brooks' courage, and news outlets replayed the confrontation over and over. Hashtag dignity over wealth trended nationwide. Yet, despite the fame, Aaliyah remained grounded, quietly walking to her shifts at a downtown cafe, nodding politely to customers, her focus unwavering. Richard Hale, on the other hand, found the aftermath unbearable. His wealth and influence had shielded him from public scrutiny for decades, but now the world watched his every move. Board meetings were interrupted by calls from journalists, tabloids painted him as a bully, and investors subtly distanced themselves. For the first time, Hale felt the pressure of consequences beyond money. Hale decided he would confront Aaliyah again, but this time, in a supposedly private setting, a gala hosted for elite investors at his penthouse. He believed he could intimidate her away from the growing narrative, to reclaim control over the story. Aaliyah, however, had learned to trust her instincts. She agreed to attend, but she did not come alone. General Marcus Reed had taken note of Hale's arrogance and its public fallout. The retired general reached out to Aaliyah privately, offering guidance and support. "If he tries anything, don't let fear guide you," Marcus said. "Your courage at the last gala isn't just your story, it's a statement about integrity and self-respect. Let that guide every move you make." The night of the penthouse gala, Aaliyah stepped into the luxurious apartment overlooking Manhattan, her presence calm but commanding. Hale, expecting submission, was shocked to see her accompanied by Marcus, his imposing figure subtly radiating authority. The room of investors turned tense, sensing a silent war of moral courage unfolding before their eyes. "Ah, Aaliyah," Hale said, his tone attempting to mask his irritation. "Back for more entertainment?" Aaliyah's eyes met his, unwavering. "I'm here to ensure respect is given where it's due," she said simply. Murmurs rippled across the room, investors exchanging glances. Some who had initially supported Hale now questioned their allegiance. Marcus stepped forward, recounting Aaliyah's heroics, this time emphasizing her integrity and the moral lesson she had imparted to the city. "True power," he said, "is measured not by wealth, but by character. What she demonstrated is more valuable than any fortune in this room." Hale's face turned pale. Cameras discreetly placed by media outlets caught every reaction. Investors whispered, journalists scribbled notes, and social media feeds began buzzing even before the gala concluded. The power dynamic had shifted. For the first time, Hale realized influence wasn't just about money, it was about perception, morality, and the courage to stand for what's right. Aaliyah, aware of the silent revolution she had ignited, remained composed. She spoke with grace, thanked supporters, and walked through the crowd, every step reinforcing her dignity. She had turned intimidation into a lesson in humility for the arrogant billionaire. By the end of the night, hashtags had multiplied, hashtag respect Aaliyah, hashtag integrity over money, hashtag hero of NYC. The city had a new hero, one whose courage inspired not just admiration, but reflection on personal values. Aaliyah knew this was just the beginning of a larger story, one where justice, dignity, and integrity would continue to shape the lives of those around her. The following morning, New York City awoke to headlines that would not be forgotten. "Waitress who stood up to billionaire becomes NYC hero." Aaliyah Brooks' image appeared on every major news site, her calm, composed expression a symbol of courage and integrity. Hale, on the other hand, was the subject of viral commentary, his arrogance exposed for all to see. At her apartment in Queens, Aaliyah sipped coffee and scrolled through the flood of messages, support from strangers, journalists requesting interviews, and even invitations from social justice organizations. She had never sought recognition, yet the story had taken on a life of its own. She knew, however, that this was bigger than personal fame. The conversation about respect, dignity, and equality had only just begun. Richard Hale tried to regain control, hosting a press conference at his office, but his words fell flat. His attempts at damage control seemed insincere, and social media scrutiny amplified every misstep. Meanwhile, investors and elite patrons began distancing themselves, wary of being associated with a man who had publicly humiliated a woman in front of an entire city. His empire, once untouchable, was beginning to wobble. Meanwhile, Marcus Reed arranged for Aaliyah to speak at a charity foundation focused on empowering women in the workforce. The event was held at a midtown community center, vastly different from the gilded penthouses and gala ballrooms. Here, Aaliyah's story became a lesson in resilience, courage, and moral integrity. Her voice, once overshadowed by power and wealth, now commanded respect. She spoke to a crowd of hundreds, her words simple but piercing. "Courage isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. But when faced with injustice, it matters more than wealth or status. True power lies in standing for what's right, even when the world expects you to bend." Hale watched online, humiliated once again. His attempts to discredit her backfired spectacularly. The public's admiration for Aaliyah only grew, and donations poured into foundations supporting women and communities historically marginalized in corporate spaces. He realized that true influence wasn't about instilling fear, it was about respect, and he had squandered both. As weeks passed, the billionaire tried to quietly make amends, charity donations, PR campaigns, but the city had already shifted its perception. Aaliyah's heroism became a case study in courage and dignity, inspiring discussions in schools, workplaces, and even boardrooms across the United States. Marcus Reed, proud of the young woman he had supported, remarked to her privately, "You've changed more than one life, Aaliyah. You've reminded people that integrity matters more than wealth or power. The city needed that lesson, and you gave it." Aaliyah smiled softly. "I didn't set out to teach anyone, Marcus. I just refused to bow. But sometimes standing firm is all it takes." The story closed with the city celebrating not just her bravery, but a broader message: respect and dignity could not be bought, coerced, or silenced. Aaliyah Brooks, the young waitress from Queens, had become a symbol of moral courage, a beacon of hope for anyone facing injustice, no matter how powerful their oppressor. Follow us for more real stories of courage, exposure, and justice.